you would turn with me in your Bibles to Psalm 60. Be looking at a lesson here entitled, His Banner Over Us is Truth. Psalm, and it also comes from the book of Psalms, and we sing it, or I used to sing it. Those who still go to camps or youth devotionals sing it a lot. His banner over us is love. But for this particular psalm, His banner over us is truth. Our God is a God who makes promises, but every now and then it seems like that His promises are not coming forth as He said that they would. Now, for the nation of Israel, the promise was the promised land. All there were other promises there. Your descendants will be like the seashore. You'll be my special people. But you have this piece of land, this promised land, this land right in the middle of everything. You know, if you're right in the middle of everything, you've got a lot of power. You've got a lot of prestige. But if you are out in the outskirts, you don't have much of anything. Well, Israel, as God had given them the promised land, brought them into the promised land, was blessing them tremendously because of their falling away from the precepts of God, the commandments of God, the law of God, because they were going off and looking at the idols and sometimes even worshiping the idols of the nations around them and of the nations or the peoples within the borders of the promised land that they had not driven out. God began to look at them in a different way. God needed to chastise them. God needed to punish them. You have 400 years of the judges. The book of Judges talks about the cycles that they would go through and how they would fall away from God. God would allow some nation to rise up to oppress them. They would finally repent. God would send a judge or a deliverer to bring them back, but it wasn't very long before they were falling off again. And the ultimate fall basically was when the Israelites, during the time of Samuel, demanded a king like the nations around them. God had fully intended to give them a king after His own heart, but they wanted a king like the nations around them. And they would be satisfied with nothing else. So they finally got a king like the nations around them, and it was Saul. Saul, the son of Kish. Saul, this man who had so much promise, but proved to be exactly what they wanted. A king like the nations around them. And he became corrupted. He stepped back away from God, stepped back away from the laws that would show him how to rule and how to be a good king. So they were not receiving the blessings. They were at war constantly with Saul, the Amalekites, the Philistines, all of these nations. And even at the time when you get to David's kingdom, there was still a lot of fighting that had to go on, because they had not been faithful to God. So Psalm 60 comes off this promise that was given basically in Genesis chapter 15. And even with this man whose heart is like the heart of God, he's a man after God's own heart, and they're not enjoying the fullness of the blessings, the fullness of the promises. They're beginning to say, maybe God can't keep His promises. Maybe this is the best that we can hope for. We just have to fight all the time. Maybe really God can't do all of those things that we thought He could. So this psalm teaches us three important things about not Israel, not the enemies, but about life. About life. The life as we live it, the life that we are called to live, basically. But it's an overall view, and it's for any time and any period. But particularly for us who are the children of God, as we gather together to worship Him, as we go out to serve Him. we've got to be very careful that we don't start to distrust the promises of God. When we start distrusting the promises of God, we stop being a faithful people. We start becoming a doubtful people. And as those doubts arise, we soon leave the God who can do things for us for the gods of this world that do absolutely nothing for us. So we want to look at these three things. Number one, in times of calamity, we should examine our faithfulness to God first. Verse 1. What does it say? Oh God, you have cast us off. You have broken us down. You have been displeased. Oh, restore us again. Yes, you've cast us off. You've broken us down. It's because you've been displeased by the things that we are doing. So there's always that self-examination. Number two, God does not expect perfection, but He does expect us to progress and to grow. Look at verse 2. You have made the earth tremble. You have broken it. Heal the breaches, for it is shaking. Reestablish us. Bring us back. We've fallen away, but Lord, you're the one who has to bring us back. You're the one who has to do these things. And I guess that's more even of verse 1. But the second thing, really, I guess I got messed up there. Okay, the first one, in times of calamity, look to our own faithfulness before challenging God's faithfulness. Number two, temporary defeats and losses lead to humility and search for support systems. Okay? And that's that verse 2. Let me read it again. You have made the earth tremble. You have broken it. Heal its breaches, for it is shaking. How many people said on the first day of last week, on Monday, what's this world coming to? How many people thought the foundations of this world have been shaken? I think there were a lot of people that did. And a lot of people were questioning God. Why did God allow this to happen? Well, why does that come about? Well, it's because people lack the faithfulness in God that needs to be there. God didn't do those things. Did God allow those things to happen? Yes, He did. Why did He do that? The most obvious answer is to draw us closer to Him, to trusting in Him. And two, go back to number one, examine our lives. The third point, it is natural for reality to cause us to question our sanity from time to time. Am I crazy for worshiping God? Am I crazy for expecting God to keep His promises? Look at verse 3. You have shown your people hard things. You have made us drink the wine of confusion. Because they had not been faithful like they should have, God brought a spirit of confusion to them. Because they were not being faithful, it's kind of like God says, I'm going to let these things happen to you then. But it comes out to this point where, well, now I've got to question God. I'm confused. What's going on here? Why are these things happening? What is going on? So, as we get into the lesson, when doubts arise, we must look for God's banner. When doubts arise, we must look for God's banner, especially the children of God. When something happens, like Boston, West Texas, when something like that happens, the first thing we should do is look for God's banner. Look at verse 4. You have given a banner to those who fear you, that it may be displayed because of the truth. Okay? So we look for the banner. What does it mean that we look for a banner? Some of you fellows have been in the military. Maybe some of you women too. Those things happen these days. But if you are in the military, say you're in the Army, the Army has different levels. What do they have? They have platoons. Well, they have squads, and then they have platoons and companies and all the way, regiments and such. And each one of them is represented in some way. And they've got a little flag that somebody carries that says, this is regiment so-and-so, company so-and-so, platoon so-and-so, squad so-and-so. Do they get down on the squad level? Yeah. And what is that for? If you ever watch some of the Civil War movies, they're always carrying this one. Don't let the flag touch the ground. Rally around the flag. And that's for either side. But then either side would have those flags that represented who they were, what regiment, company, platoon, squad that they were with, that in the confusion of battle, they would look up and they would find their flag. And when they found their flag, what would they do? They'd rally around the flag, wouldn't they? And they'd get their company back together, their squad back together, whatever it was, they would get back together. And somebody there would be in charge. Somebody to lead them. Somebody to tell them what needed to be done. In our time, for us, you and me, as God's children, as the army of God, when there are times of confusion, the first thing we need to do is look up to our banner and rally around that banner. The flag represents many things to a company, but it lets you know that you're in the right place, that you're in the right company, and you've got people around you who have the same concerns that you are, and you're in it together. It'd be a tough thing to be out there on your own. So you look for that banner. We are to rally around the banner that God flies over His children. Why? Because it shows His presence. You want to be where God is, right? I hope so, especially when times are confusing, when times are difficulty, in a disaster, whatever. I want to find God. Well, God's everywhere, right? Well, yes, but listen. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in His name, there He is also. Jesus said, I'll be there also. So when we are together as Christians, in the face of danger, in the face of a challenge, we rally under that banner. God's presence is here. It represents His protection, because we've got people there. He's going to protect me under this banner, plus we've got all this protection. We are here together. We are a mighty force. Look, one with God is a majority. One person with God is a mighty force for good. So we have to have that connection. We're looking for God. It typifies, or it symbolizes His leadership. And when we seek for that banner, and we find that banner, and we rally under that banner, we're saying, God, lead me. God, I'm putting myself under your command. And then it typifies His comfort, because it is comforting to know that you are in the company of brothers and sisters of like-minded faith. And we have a strength that is there. Jesus sent most of His disciples out 2 by 2. When Paul would travel, you look at Paul's account of his missionary journeys. When is Paul at his lowest? When he's by himself in Athens. When Timothy comes, some of the others come, I'm relieved. Now I can really get down to it. But when he's by himself, he's hurting. We need one another's company. But that banner, God's banner over us, in the psalm, is truth. We seek the truth. We find the truth. We rally to the truth. And there with truth, we come under God's leadership. We come under His protection. And we have His comfort and the comfort of like-minded brothers and sisters in Christ. But it's under that banner. That banner that we look for, we seek for. It's a banner of truth. It's impossible for God to lie. God always keeps His promises. But sometimes we forget that God's promises are conditional. And God says, if you will do this, I promise I will do this. And I also promise that if you don't do this, I won't do this. We take God at His word. The same God who promises to save us if we will trust and obey, has promised that He will destroy us for eternity if we fail to trust, believe, and if we fail to obey. If we trust Him with the one promise, we better trust Him with the flip side of that promise also, because He is a God of truth. It's good to hear God's promises over and over again. Verses 6 through 8. God has spoken in His holiness. I will rejoice. I will divide Shechem and measure out the valley of Succoth. Gilead is mine, and Manasseh is mine. Ephraim also is the helmet for my head. Judah is my lawgiver. Moab is my washpot. Over Edom I will cast my shoe. Philistia, shout in triumph because of me. Well, let's go down through these and see what's going on here. To David's nation, God promised that the land would belong to Israel. Shechem and Ephraim represented the land east and west of the Jordan River. Remember when we talked about Shechem and Succoth, where Jacob had come to? Well, that's that side, and later on Gilead expresses the same thing. But Ephraim, see, that's in the mountains. That's deep right inside the promised land, kind of like right in the middle of it. Succoth, Manasseh, Gilead. Again, those represent the eastern part. Remember, Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh said, we don't want to go into the promised land. We want to inherit over here. And God let them. But God said, it's going to be yours. Ephraim is the north, and Judah is the south, symbolically. And that's the way it kind of broke out, and you read it through the Old Testament with the divided kingdom. Ephraim to the north, Judah to the south. The whole land would be Israel's soon. Soon. God was bringing it about. And God did bring it about later on. Now, the enemies of God's people, they will be defeated. And notice the future tenses here, starting in verse 8. But Moab is my washpot. Right? What do you do with a washpot? You wash your dishes, you wash your clothes, you wash whatever you're washing, and then you dump it out. You're done with it. God says, I'm done with Moab. It's going to be dumped out like a washpot. Edom. Over Edom I will cast my shoe. You say, what in the world does that mean? You remember a few years ago when George Bush was overseas and he's having that press conference and the guy took his shoe off and threw at him? That is a sign of contempt. If you go most places in the eastern realm, you sit back and you put your feet up on a desk or a table or whatever, and you show people the bottom of your feet, your shoes, you're telling them, I don't think very much of you. What God is saying, I don't think very much of Edom. Oh, they may look powerful, they may scare you, my people, but I've got them under control. I throw my shoe over them. I've got so much contempt for them. Rejoice in Philistia. Now, go back. Philistia. Shout in triumph because of me. But it's not Philistia, you shout in triumph because of me. It's Israel. When I talk of Philistia, you shout in triumph, Israel. because I'm going to defeat them. And we see that in David's time, enemies are defeated. So that when Solomon becomes king, everything starts to back off into a peaceful kingdom. Solomon has a few battles to fight, but certainly not like David. But see, God's promise is going to be kept. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me, Jesus says. In my house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. If I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again to receive you to myself. Unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And where I am going, you know, and the way you know. God says, I told you, or Jesus said, I told you where you're going to go, and I told you the way to get there. Now you've got to trust and you've got to obey, because that's the way. He's the way, truth, and the life, but we have to walk that way, that truth, and that life. But just as He made promises to Israel, He makes promises to us today. And those promises are conditional to us. But we have no reason to fear. We don't have reason for our hearts to be troubled about it. There's plenty of trouble in this world. We've got to rise above it. Rise above it as His children. Listen, if God cannot do it, who can? If God can't get all this straightened out, who can? Well, some people say God doesn't seem to be doing a very good job of it. What choices have we given Him? What do we want? You want to be a mind-known robot? That you don't have a choice? That He just stops you from doing evil? No, He doesn't operate that way. He has made us in His image. He's created us that we can know the difference between right and wrong, and we can make a decision, and just as surely as we can make a wrong decision, we can make a right decision. And He has informed us as to what is a right and wrong decision, and He simply calls us to believe and obey, to make the right decisions. But if God can't do it, we're in trouble. If God can't do it, nobody can. Look at the last few verses here, 9 through 11. Who will bring me to the strong city? Who will lead me to Edom? Is it not you, O God, who cast us off? Yeah, God, when you punished me, think about Saul of Tarsus, when the bright light hits and he's knocked to the ground and he can't see anymore. Do you think he was getting the message that God was upset with him? Wouldn't it be better for us that if we get the message a little bit sooner, before He blinds us, or before He causes us to be lepers, or before He shrinks our hands, or any of those things? Wouldn't it be better that we recognize and turn to Him when we get in trouble? Is it not you, O God, who cast us off? And for Israel, again, they've been in all this trouble for so long, He cast them off. And you, O God, who did not go out with our armies. We went out to fight and we lost battles. Because you weren't with us, God. But God, that's not your fault. That's our fault. I go out to do battle and I lose, that's not God's fault. That's my fault. Your fault. Verse 11. Give us help from trouble, for the help of man is useless. Let's make an alliance with Egypt. Let's make an alliance with Babylon. Let's make alliances with men. Fine. Go ahead. It won't help. Sooner or later, you're going to be defeated. The worst thing for our country today, we're not going to be defeated because we're not powerful. We're going to be defeated because we've run out of money. We're destroying ourselves from the inside. We stop as a nation, really, trusting in God. And then we see these things happening and we wonder where God is. There's a thing going around on the internet. One person asks another person a question, why didn't God stop this school shooting? Well, he kicked God out of school a long time ago. How could he do it? Those are the types of battles we fight. And we have to be attuned to listen to encourage others to turn to God for His help and for His wisdom. Give us help from trouble, for the help of man is useless. It was God's will that Israel inherit the land and that the enemies be subdued. But it was the same God who seemingly cast Israel out and was letting them be defeated. Once they got a handle on it, they said, let us return to God, and He will bless us. And when they did, He would. They repented. God's will became their will. Israel rallied around the banner, and they survived. Survived for a long time like that. Down to 606 to 586 BC when they're taken into exile. There they rallied around the banner, more so even than when they were in their own nation. Israel then followed God to certain victory. The reign of Solomon again was the high point of the nation of Israel. They received control of the promised land. They gained respect from the nations around them. They showed that they were people whom God was blessing because they were God's people. The temple was built in Jerusalem. The nation prospered. Their enemies were few and their enemies were weak because a man after God's own heart had turned Israel back toward God. Marching under the banner of our King, there is no good or holy thing that we cannot accomplish. It's when we get outside, away from the banner of our King, that we begin to fail. And we begin to lose faith, and disaster happens. The battle cry of God's people, when they find themselves lost from the company of God's host, is always and forever, back to the Bible. Is that not right? Isn't that what we talk about, the Restoration Movement? Isn't that what the Reformation Movement was about? Back to the Bible. Isn't that what Jesus told people in His day? What saith the Scripture? Back to the Bible. Let's gather under the banner of God's truth. We gathered under it for the terms of salvation. We gather under it for the pattern of Christian living. We gather under it for the pattern of worship in spirit and truth. We gather around it for the promises God has given to those who battle for Him. Isn't it strange that the Apostle Paul in Ephesians chapter 6 talks about putting on the whole armor of God? We're in a fight. We're in a battle. And the thing that's being battled over is our souls and where they will spend eternity. And if that doesn't get us to gather around under the banner of God, then I don't know what will. Verse 12. Through God, that bears repeating, doesn't it? Through God, we will do valiantly. For it is He who shall tread down our enemies. Tread down our enemies? Yeah, what was it that God said in Genesis chapter 3 and verse 15? That Satan would bruise his heel, but he would bruise Satan's head. And through God, we will do valiantly. Through our trust and obedience to God, we will do valiantly. To our rallying around under the banner of God's truth, when we do that, we will do valiantly. Are you walking under the banner of God's truth? Are you operating under that banner or not? If not, you're fighting a losing battle. You can't win. It's impossible. So why not take refuge in the shadow of His wings? We'll talk about that some other time. That in the shadow of His prayer cloth, or His prayer robe. That's getting close, isn't it? That's getting close to God when we get there to His prayers. But how we do it, believe, repent, confess, be baptized for the remission of sins, rise to walk in newness of life, that's gathering around the banner of God. And when we walk in the light as He is in the light, where is that light? It's right there. The light of God's Word, under the banner of His Word. Thank you for your time. The lesson is yours. Let's march on to certain victory. Certain victory, sure victory. The promises of God. As